Welcome back to our Skaven series. Well, last we left off, Clan Pestilence had returned from Lustria to Skavenblight, starting a massive civil war between Skaven kind, almost outright dooming the entire race into a constant state of war. Were it not for the return and intervention of Clan Eshen, whose skill at assassination forced Clan Pestilence to parley with the Council of 13, eventually seeing the end of the civil war and a united Skaven race once again. With the Skaven once again united, if that word could ever be properly used, they began to rebuild, taking a few centuries to rebuild and grow, as the Civil War had almost destroyed their race entirely. But soon they were ready, and their attention was turned to the surface. By this point in the timeline, the Empire had long been formed, and were probably one of the strongest active kingdoms. Obviously, since the Skaven knew this, they thought it best to attempt to destroy, or at least weaken, this kingdom. All was calm on the surface. The Empire had been seeing its most prosperous time to date. Crops grew strong. Children were healthy. The land was at peace. All was calm. All was silent. One should never believe that calm also means safe. For in a matter of days, a foul plague spread throughout the lands of the Empire, crafted by the genius of Clan Pestilence, and unleashed by the stealthy warriors of Clan Eshen. Whole hamlets, towns and cities quickly became infected, giving the governing bodies of the Imperium little to no time to react. Many died, and the infection spread more and more. Those towns and cities that were not initially infected began to close their doors to those seeking refuge. But eventually, they would succumb, either by their own kind or by the tunneling Skaven of Clan Eshen releasing these toxins from within. Many more would die, the plague ravaging the Empire to the brink of its utter destruction. But plagues are not normally permanent, and eventually they began to wane. Hope returned to the dying Empire. Maybe they could rebuild. Surely the worst had already passed. They were wrong. As the plague began to wane, the Skaven launched their offensive. Thousands upon thousands of the Ratmen swarmed out of the intricate tunnel systems that they had built under the Empire. Once again, the Imperium was being ravaged, but this time not by plague, but the screaming and chittering of a horde unlike those ever seen before. The Empire was almost undone. Only a few bastions yet remain, but they would not be safe for long. The Skaven act fast, and they would not wait and give the Imperials a chance to regroup. First, they struck at the heart of the Imperium, killing the selfish, then Emperor Boris Goldgather, who did nothing to help his people throughout both the invasion and the plague. Next, they laid siege to the last bastions of the Imperium, on hopes of utterly destroying them. Those humans who were caught off guard outside the city walls would be rounded up. They would serve as slaves, food, and test subjects to many Skaven experiments. Clan Pestilence mostly would take advantage of the influx of slaves. Many new toxins and plagues would be created, some to be used now, and some to be used at a later date. A surprise for the future, perhaps. The other Skaven clans would again begin to worry about the actions of Clan Pestilence. For even during the insanity of this all-out war, they acted for themselves. While it is true they fought alongside the other Skaven clans, they at this point had overthrown another 2 members of the Council of 13. Clan Pestilence now controlled 3 seats upon the council, making them the strongest and most influential clan at the time. The Skaven would never stop acting against each other, and even now, when the Empire was on the cusp of total defeat, this would be their downfall. For while the Skaven were once again being distracted, fighting themselves, and the plagues they themselves created were starting to affect the Skaven themselves, hope began to grow within the remnants of the Empire. It was the perfect time to strike. The Skaven were otherwise occupied. The Elector Count Mandred von Zelt gathered what remained of his forces and led a mighty charge, eventually regrouping with what forces remained in the last bastions of the Empire. The Imperials charged out onto the now broken hordes of Skaven, repelling them and shattering the morale of the various clans. The Skaven, being as broken as they were, currently stood little chance against the might of the Imperials, slowly losing hold after hold. Eventually, most of the lost Imperial territories were reclaimed. Yet the Skaven, in a last-ditch effort, attempted various counterattacks. However, time and time again, they failed. It was finally at the Battle of the Howling Hills when Mandred von Zelt and his remaining forces completely shattered the Skaven lines, killing some of their most powerful warlords. The Imperials then launched a powerful crusade to destroy all remaining Skaven on the surface world. The Skaven were being repelled and eventually found themselves forced back into their tunnels and sewers. The Empire would stand and rebuild itself, more powerful than before. The Skaven had failed, and they looked towards each other to pass blame. The various Skaven clans blamed each other for their failure to destroy the Empire. Many would outright assault each other. Various minor civil wars broke out. Some demanded compensation from Clan Pestilence, for they were affected with the clan's various plagues. Those clans were quickly never heard from again. This infighting halted Skaven advancement for many years. They would not, or better said, could not unite once again to assault the Empire before they had a chance to regain their lost strength. That is not to say that the Skaven never got their revenge, however. For in an act of vengeance, an assassin of Clan Eshen was dispatched to end the life of the very man who turned the tide of war, effectively ending the Skaven campaign. Mandred von Zelt, now known as Mandred Skavenslayer, was now the Emperor of the Empire. His very existence was an insult to the Skaven race. He was slain in his sleep, bringing much joy to the Council of 13, and once again fueling the hearts of the Skaven. They would return in time, and when they did, they would crush the Empire. Over the years, the Skaven race found themselves growing once again. They bred, and they experimented, and eventually, they were ready once again to assault the surface. For the time being, the Skaven made minor campaigns across the known world. This time, they did not act to take over the world, but instead acted in the shadows, only making themselves known in the most desperate of times. They sent Clan Eshin assassins on various missions to start wars among the various races and kingdoms of the world. The Skaven were learning about the world above. They were preparing, and soon they would strike once again. After many years, the Skaven finally found themselves ready once again. They would strike out in a similar manner as they did with the Empire long ago, perhaps forgetting their past failures. This time, however, the Skaven's eyes leered towards Bretonnia. The plagues were once again unleashed, and the Skaven waited, hoping for as much of the local populace to be destroyed as possible, before ascending and eliminating the remnants, to then ravage the Knightly Kingdom. But the Skaven didn't count on Bretonnia's respect for its people. The Knightly Lords, seeing the local peasantry as an expendable resource, better for 1,000 peasants to die than a single Knightly Lord. The peasants were put to the sword. Many infected or otherwise were killed. Whole towns were wiped out by their own rulers, an act which even shook the Skaven. But nonetheless, the Skaven could not afford to wait. Some damage had at least been done, and the various clans launched their offensives. Rampaging across Bretonnia, the Skaven slaughtered, ate, and enslaved the local populace. Sadly, however, the Skaven did not count of the resilience of the Bretonnian people, much more scared of their own lords than the vicious ratmen, so they fought until their last breaths. And so the Skaven were held back for the time being. Over time, Bretonnia's strength would wane. The united force of Skaven were getting closer and closer to destroying this proud nation, were it not for the interference of the Wood Elves. The Wood Elves of Athaloran, while originally watching the war from afar, knew that should Bretonnia fall, the Skaven would eventually turn their eyes towards Athaloran. The might of the Wood Elves quickly descended upon the battlefield, and both Bretonnian and Wood Elf fought together. The Skaven were caught off guard, and once again their forces were shattered, and the Skaven were broken. Once again, the Skaven found themselves pushed back to Skavenblight. They had failed 2 massive campaigns to enslave the world above. Somebody had to be at fault, but who? Heads turned towards Clan Pestilence once again. Surely it was the plagues conjured by these diseased rats that was the reason for their losses. Clan Pestilence sought to destroy the Skaven from within, to take over Skavenblight. There was not a doubt in their minds. Civil Rest once again took over the Skaven race. with many calling for the Skaven lords of Clan Pestilence to be expelled from the Council of 13. Obviously, the Plague Lords would outright deny any intent to overthrow the Council, and thus claimed that it was the Council themselves and the lesser clans that sought the end of the Skaven. Clan Pestilence branded them all heretics and false worshippers of the Horned Rat. As can be expected, this led to a massive argument between the Plague Lords and the rest of the clans. And as per usual, a civil war broke out. This time, however, many of the other clans had grown used to seeing how Clan Pestilence fights, and were, in some form, ready. For 400 years, Skaven Blight became a battlefield unlike any other. Hundreds of thousands of Skaven would be killed. Clans rose and fell. Clan Pestilence would unleash vile plagues. Clan Moulder unleashing their insane volatile mutations. Clan Scryer sending a rain of warp fire from their destructive machines. And Clan Eshen, surprisingly, staying relatively neutral, selling their services to the highest bidder. The fighting seemed endless, but in the shadows stood the Greyseers. They, who were uninterested in the war, but rather preparing for something with a much greater purpose. Greyseers were dispatched to make contact with each and every active Skaven clan. They were demanded to stop their infighting, to gather under the Great Bell Tower, or suffer the wrath of their horned god. The Skaven, as can be expected, were extremely afraid of the Horned Rat's rage. They ceased their infighting. At least, they would for the meantime. Representatives of each clan would gather at the foot of the Great Temple. There they waited. Former great enemies stood side by side. They dared not to start a fight. Who would? They were directly under the gaze of their father, the Horned Rat, and he must never be angered. All was silent. All was calm. The doors to the Great Temple slowly opened, and out marched 169 Greyseers. 13 13s. The last of them, Seer Lord Critislick. He began to chant. The air surged with a dark power. Soon, so did the rest of the Greyseers begin chanting. All the other Skaven began to cower, as one by one, slaves would be presented and sacrificed. The skies darkened, and the great bell tolled 13 times, the sacred number. Then once again, all was silent. None dared to speak. Critislick would move ever so slightly. Then he would open his jaw, and a powerful screech would sound from the Seer Lord. A cloud of vapor would rise. The Skaven, awestruck, would not react, only observe. From the vapor came a great claw. It lashed and scratched, as if it was breaking reality itself. This was not the case. Indeed, this was a creature from a different realm. A dark realm. A realm sacred to the Skaven. With a flash, he was there. The Horned Rat himself. A manifestation of him at least. His skin blacker than void, eyes blood red, hungry and full of hatred. There he stood, watching over his children, his creations. Those who bore witness to this dark creature knew exactly what they were looking at. Their dreaded father had come to them to offer salvation, or their end was not known, but there they waited. They fell to the ground out of respect to their father, their god. None dared to act, none were brave enough. Suddenly, a great claw appeared, scooping some of the cowering rats, bringing them close to a great maw, where they would be devoured. Again and again this would happen, the horned rat feasting upon his very children. Why? This is unknown, but none dare question it. Soon enough, the dark god was done with his feast, and with his great power, he revealed a pillar made of the purest warpstone, with runes along all 13 sides. Runes that would dictate the future of all of Skavendom. Then he spoke. A voice so dark, so evil, thundered across Skavenblight. The horned rat told his children that their pitiful infighting has amused him greatly. But now was the time to stop. The Skaven were to unite in order to be strong enough to take over the world. Once this was done, the horned rat would return and manifest fully to rule the land alongside his children. The Council of 13, which at this point had been disbanded due to the massive civil war, was to be reformed. Their rule to be unquestioned, lest they suffer the horned rat's wrath. With a flash of blinding light, he was gone, back to the void from where he came. The remaining Skaven clan lords slowly approached the Great Pillar, knowing that they must touch it to see if they were chosen by their father. One by one, they touched the pillar. Some survived and would ascend as a new member of the Council of 13. Many others died, engulfed by warp fire, feeling an unimaginable pain before dying. Eventually, there stood 12 rats, the new Council of 13. From now on, the Skaven would be united, within reasons, of course. And they would run rampant across the very corners of the world. Nowhere was safe. None could escape the gaze of the horned rat and his millions of children. Soon they would rise. Soon they would control the world. For the Great Ascendancy is almost here. And with that, my friends, we've come to the end of our Skaven series. There will be more videos in the future, as I would like to highlight how they breed, how they work between clans, and so on. And these will be kind of minorish videos of like 5-10 minutes as per usual. But thank you so much for watching, guys. And if you did enjoy the video, might I suggest giving the video a like, or even subscribing to the channel, as it really does help us out. Once again, thank you so much for watching, and I shall see you all again very, very soon. Have a good day.